Hello and welcome back to the channel, folks. HeirofCarthage here, and yes, it is a giant Carthage versus Rome sub-commanders battle, so I hope you all are ready. Man, I'm super stoked for this. Whenever Sol sent this over, it had my interest immediately, so I definitely appreciate him sending this over, and of course all the players who participated to make it happen. If you want to play in sub-commanders battles like this, he has a Discord. I will try and get a link to that down in the description. If not, look for a comment from Sol and myself, and hopefully we'll be able to get that link in there for you. But I know he has a group on Discord where they get together to do these matches. So let's check out the armies that are going to be involved here. And remember in sub-commanders that players take command essentially of different sections of a larger army, right? You're going to have a cavalry commander essentially. You're going to have one who does spears and skirmish, or swords and skirmish. And so I think it's spears and skirmish, and then like heavier infantry. But again, the exact mix-up of it, I don't know the rules perfectly, but it's roughly that breakdown. But let's see what Carthage is fielding. Carthage should have a pretty solid potential with cavalry. I mean, unless Roman brings something like, you know, Praetorian cavalry, which this is a Pre Marian match, if I remember right, so we shouldn't be seeing that. But for Carthage, we're going to see Mercenary Celtic Light Horse, which is quite fast. Does have that frenzied charge, and I believe they huck javelins before getting into combat. We've got a couple of mercenary Numidian cav. One of them has the chevron sitting on there as leftover funds. We do have an African war elephant general in the back, and then we've got a general's bodyguard, some more mercenary Celtic light horse, and then I saw a Scutari cav, two of those, and a single Carthaginian cav. There's another bodyguard there. Looks like some Carthaginian hoplites as one of the heavier infantry units, and they are enclosing some mercenary Balearic slingers. Looks like there's a mixture of Libyan infantry, mercenary Italian swords, Samnite warriors, and Libyans up front. Let's take a look at the Roman army, which is taking a pretty commanding position on this hill, and I assume at this point whichever player feels like they can dislodge the other one might come to an advantage here in terms of terrain, because this is this really solid terrain for Rome to fight from. If Carthage has to fight uphill into this, it is not going to be pretty. It looks like there's some levies here for Rome, because it is a Pre Marian Roman build. They have the Syrian archers there as well. There's some velites, so Carthage has the superior long range. Rome has the total superior firepower in terms of just sheer firepower. It looks like there's some Saki Equites Extraordinari being also supported by Equites, and some Saki Equites from a cavalry standpoint, and then Rome could potentially have its own Numidian cavalry. I haven't been watching to see whether that is the case here, but I don't see any, at least not at the moment. A fair number of Equites on the battlefield, though, and based on the cavalry I saw from Carthage, I mean, that could be enough to challenge things. Look, there's another Roman cavalry popping over here and then going back hidden due to line of sight for Carthage. Looks like it is an Equite unit popping up there. So quite a bit of cavalry for Rome, which, let's take a look at the infantry situation. Looks like Hastati making up a front. I'm seeing about 5 of those up front, including one Saki Hastati. And then there's several Principe in a back line. And then I'm seeing quite a few units of Vigiles, and looks like maybe, at least for now, a singular Triari unit. There could be another one over here that is hidden out of sight. So it's going to be an interesting matchup here. The Roman heavy infantry is quite good. The Roman light infantry, or I say medium, I'm going to call them light because Hastati to me come across as light infantry at least. They're pretty decent for a light infantry, but they're not, you know, as hard hitting as their more veteran Roman counterparts like the Principe. A little bit of a cavalry tough going on out here. Then a mercenary Numidian cavalry getting nearly tangled up with an Equite before pulling away. Multiple Equites here, though, and only the singular Scutari cavalry. That I don't think that would have gone well had the Carthaginians stuck around. It looks like they may be kind of assessing their options for how to pull the Romans off of this hill, as well they should be. I do like how this single Celtic horse here is left for some, you know, visuals on that Roman mountaintop position over there. It is indeed a threatening position for the Romans. I'm going to be curious to see how these Balearic slingers end up used, and I know in some past Total War games, like Rome 1, for instance, having your skirmishers on high ground like this did increase their range, and sometimes rather substantially, depending on how high it is. I don't remember if that's the case in Rome 2, I want to say there's at least combat modifiers or a morale modifier of some sort for fighting uphill. And I think it's fairly significant, but I don't remember what the modifiers are in terms of missiles. If you all could let me know in the comments, if you're certain you know what those modifiers are, please throw it in the comments so I can, you know, mark it, and hopefully people watching the video can check it out. So we are getting a little bit of a skirmish here. Feasibly, I can see the Romans wanting to use the velites to put extra shots into the Balearic slingers. The Syrian archers are firing from quite a distance here. I mean, but they have a fairly considerable range as it is. It's 150, to the same as the slingers 150. Oh, the Carthaginians can't allow any charges in here into these Balearic slingers. If they lose any Balearic slingers, it is a devastating loss, because the Romans have that hill position, so they can ill afford to lose Balearic slingers to a somewhat insane Roman charge like that. Ooh, look, here comes the velites too. So a pretty aggressive push coming from the Romans, and they're going to get into a cavalry engagement pretty far from home. And that's a little bit concerning if I'm Rome, because there's a lot of Carthaginian support units here, and I don't think this cavalry engagement's going to bode well for the Romans. They do go ahead and charge again with the Saki Equites, I think trying to buy a retreat for their Equites. Mercenary Numidian cavalry here using a quick reload to really dump some shots into the Saki Extraordinary. And it looks like all the Balearic slingers at the moment are safe, and they are pouring their fire into some velites. It's an interesting target. If I were the Balearic slingers, I think I would be looking to start picking apart Hastati. It would certainly not be great because you're going right into their shields. But if you could start picking apart Roman infantry, I feel like that's going to cause the Romans to have to take action. They can't afford to lose a lot of infantry. Now, they could pull them back further up the hill, potentially, and see if they could keep them protected. But let's see what Carthage chooses to do. And remember that I'm no pro at this game. I'm speculating about what I might try. There's no guarantee that what I would try would necessarily work either, because there's factors on how the players would actually react, and then also the fact of whether I'm even stating the right advice. So let's see how the two teams pull it off here. I think the Romans have a pretty solid position on this hill. It is going to be formidable. Celtic horse is forced to retreat as a couple of Equites came to face it down. The Carthaginian elephants hidden back here may become visible if Rome decides to come over the crest of that peak there. Still a lot of cat and mouse from a cavalry standpoint going on. I think Carthage had some pretty good engagements there. They got a fair number of Roman cavalry killed. And there's going to be some velites pushing up now, feasibly moving up to put some javelins into the mercenary Balearic. Oh, nope, they've moved up as cover, and those Balearic slingers are now under fire from the archers. And yeah, that Libyan hoplite is going to have to push that unit back. So let's see what happens here. Let's see where the slingers are all focus firing into a single auxiliary Syrian archer. I don't know how well their shots are going to hit. It's kind of an awkward angle with this unit slightly up on the hill right there. And then, like I said, I don't remember what the mechanics are. It could have a penalty on, say, like accuracy or something shooting uphill into an opponent. I don't recall exactly what that is. Nice work here, though, trying to keep those velites back at a respectful distance. They're going to need to in order to keep those javelins out of their key units. That Syrian archer did take a beating, and this other one is now under heavy fire here as well. So the Carthaginians are flexing that ranged muscle, at least at the moment. I don't think the Romans are going to be able to take too much of this. Velites, though, are going to make those hoplites pay for that encroach towards their hill. So the Syrian archers push back with fairly heavy losses, and I would imagine Rome's going to pull back and kind of basically leave it to Carthage to decide on how they want to attack. And like I said, if I'm Carthage, I'm wondering how much damage I can get done against this infantry. Slingers tend to have a lot of ammunition, and they have good armor-piercing value, and I think Rome could ill afford to lose several units of infantry, even if they're the lighter infantry like these Hastati. I don't think they can afford to lose much, because some of their infantry is straight garbage, like these Vigiles. Now, garbage with a purpose, I might add, right? You bring these units because they're cheap and you can use them to help support in a cavalry fight, but if you start having gaping holes in your front line, you may very well find yourself, having to move those Vigiles over there, at which point they're not going to function well even against something like a late Libyan or a Libyan hoplite, much less late Libyan, which would be slightly better. But yeah, the Vigiles are utter garbage in a melee. However, again, they can be useful at their price point for blocking cavalry charges, fending stuff out of your back lines, whatever it is that you think you need. So we're going to have a protracted skirmish here, as I think both sides are a little bit intransigent here. They don't want to give up the high ground here. I think we've all seen Obi-Wan, and we know what he says about having the high ground, and we all saw what happened to Anakin, so no doubt the Carthaginians don't want to become Anakin here. Although I have to admit, it would be cool to see Carthaginians have like a giant biomechanical suit, and dark force powers and all that kind of stuff too. I'd be down with that. Here we are, nonetheless. These Vigiles making the Hastati look like tough guys. Alright, so the Romans did descend from their hill ever so slightly here, maybe offering up an engagement with their lighter infantry corps here. The Carthaginians immediately charged a cavalry unit forward in order to fix the Romans as these mercenary Italian swords come in. The mercenary Italian swords are a fairly close match to the what do you call them, Hastati, but I would imagine that the Hastati are probably slightly better, all things considered. Here's mercenary Scutari. Now these guys will be all-out superior to the Hastati. There's some more Italian swordsmen coming here, more late Libyan. So we're going to get a pretty straight frontline engagement here. And of course, being that this is Rome 2, there won't be any winds of death or Comet of Cassandora or something else to come break up that large infantry brawl. That brawl is just going to carry on feasibly for several minutes. There was a Libyan infantry that got in there too. That's a very potent unit in a Pre Marian matchup. So that Libyan infantry, somewhat representative maybe what Hannibal's elite veterans would have looked like during the campaigns in Italy, where they rearmed themselves with Roman equipment and fashioned themselves somewhat like their enemies had fought. But not a bad engagement up front, I don't think, for Carthage so far. That Triari is going to be a tough unit to crack in there, but there's still Principe being held in reserve. This one has now moved forward to engage a mercenary Samnite warrior, but it's pulling back because there's even more support coming in for the Carthage. Oh, no, it turned around and took that fight. The Balearic Slingers are chipping away up here at the units on the hill. It looks like at the Velites at the moment, because that's what they have a shot at. The archers have a better arc of fire where they can support from behind the hill. Let's take a look at this big cavalry engagement unfolding out here. There's some Scutari cavalry that's overmatched at the moment, and the Carthaginians appear to be doing a bit of a withdrawal here, maybe turning around and just looking for better charges. Which appears to be the case now, because here comes a Scutari cab going straight into an Equite, and it should crush the Equite pretty good, if I had to take a guess. It's a bodyguard out here, and then the Celtic horse playing cat and mouse with the Equite Extraordinary. And here comes some elephants over here. I kind of like the play of the elephants over here because there's no missiles anywhere nearby to go against the elephants. A lot of those cavalry units do have a bonus versus large, but there's not any javelin or archer support out there at the moment, so it's a pretty safe place to engage the elephants. And elephants are fairly effective into a cavalry fight, especially if you have units fixed. Carthage looks like they're going to be trying to bring some fresher troops in to face this reinforcing line of Principe. So the Romans fighting in a very Romanesque fashion here, with the light infantry going in first, sometimes either being pushed back or falling back. Oh yeah. Yeah, this fight, the elephants are totally going to swing this fight. So Carthage is starting to get some fairly significant progress on the cavalry front. I wouldn't count out this Roman infantry, though. These Principe came in late, and they came in fresh. And I feel like that they are going to start to swing this fight. And there's archers and velites just hucking stuff down here. I think Carthage is kind of being worn down in the infantry department. It started strong for them, but I feel like they're going to get worn down and possibly ground out here by these three Principe. We'll see. There's still a lot of fight left, and those elephants, potentially a big player in that fight. Look at the Numidian cavalry here now, all the way behind the line. There's a lot of levies and velites, though, trying to ward them off. The Romans did keep some of their cavalry in reserve. We've got an Equite back here. And of course, there's a bodyguard here that's swinging forward with some Equites, supported by Hastati. But the Carthaginians probably have this hemmed in, but look at that. What did I state up front about that infantry fight? Sure enough, the Romans came in for a meat grinder, and the meat has now been ground. It is now freshly prepared. Some ground Carthaginian burger for anybody who wants it. I'm not surprised. Like I said, these Principe came into that fight from reserve and quite fresh. They're not going to be pelted by slingers, and those slingers are guarded by elephants, though they might want to watch out for friendly fire as it walks in front. I think the elephants should stay back there and guard that. They should be able to ward off most units swinging in for an attack, and those slingers could swing this fight back by ripping apart the Principe here. We've got some Carthaginian hoplites moving in to intercept the Roman bodyguard, and then there's still some pockets of fighting out here, though it does look like Carthage wrapped up that main cavalry melee. There's a lot of Roman skirmish units back here, along with a few Vigiles and a few Triarii. Those slingers, though, are taking a gruesome toll on the veteran Roman warriors here, as they are being absolutely shredded by this armor-piercing fire from the slingers. Slingers are absolutely devastating late into a match, especially when a unit has taken some hit point damage along the way. This does not bode well for Rome, taking rear shots here. I mean, unless these slingers run out of ammunition. Oh, and they have daggers drawn. Oh, man. These guys are getting their slings back out, so we'll see. But a couple of the units have their daggers out, so depends on how much ammunition we have left. And these ones are shooting into the velites, of all things. That's not good. The Carthaginians, I think, were about to easily swing this back in their favor, but when these guys ran out of ammunition, I suddenly have doubts. Ooh, look, a nice flaming shot here from the Carthaginians. That could turn against them, but I see what they're doing here is they're looking to soften up morale. They may follow that up with a rear charge. It ended up hurting their own morale, probably worse, though, because the flaming javelins hitting their units. So the Principe are going to finish off the only pocket of Carthaginian infantry resistance. Those elephants have to stay safe. They've got to stay away from the skirmishers. If the Carthaginians can keep those elephants safe and waste away ammunition and units who carry ammunition, then the elephants alone could win the battle. Like, assuming that army losses don't mount against them. But it's really going to depend a lot on the ammunition situation back here for the Romans. I can see Mercenary Numidian cavalry collapsing into these levy units. There's a bodyguard there. Now, Numidian cavalry, unfortunately, is not much in melee. They should be significantly better based on all the historical accounts, but in this game, they are superior javelin cavalry, and they are not really a secondary melee unit, though they can be used against very light units like these levies. And here you're going to see that being the case. The elephants are moving up here, and I don't blame them. They kind of have to make a move. Too many more losses, and Carthage is going to hit that army losses thing here, and their whole force is going to rout. So the elephants do need to come in, but they want to avoid a pila toss by all of these Principe. So their idea here would be is that you charge in, just come trampling through, don't let any units get away, keep chasing, don't let anybody make any distance and throw their javelins, which is going to require some nice micro. And I can see the elephants are being actively microed right now, and they are going to absolutely trample these Principe. It is not even going to be close. There is really no javelin support over here. The Carthaginian cavalry's kind of suicidal attacks here onto the levies pay big dividends. And it is very possible that these Carthaginians get carried on the backs of these war elephants. I'm not counting out Rome yet, though. They've got solid morale. The power bar is significantly in their favor. And if at any point something routes for Carthage, a general dies or something like that, that could trigger army losses and send all the Carthaginians fleeing. There is a bodyguard back here fleeing away from two Roman bodyguards, which would ultimately match its numbers. I don't know about strength. I haven't ever compared the two bodyguard units. There's a Scutari cavalry that might want to head back there and support. Otherwise, this elephant general is just having a heyday of this. The archers, if they have ammunition, they're keeping their distance. I don't think they have the ammunition, or else they'd already be firing feasibly. So these elephants just racked up probably 300 kills. I think they already had about 100. So all of that Roman heavy infantry advantage just gets totally negated there. This Celtic horse found some returning levy units, and only 8 horses strong. It may not be able to finish this, but it can at least harass them. And then the Carthaginian bodyguard standing strong. One of the Roman bodyguards was sent packing here. And I don't know how this fight will go. These two units feasibly should be close. The Carthaginian bodyguard has better armor and better damage, and then lower attack than the Legatus. So, not something I usually see a battle coming down to. Just look at the carnage on the battlefield here from that early fight. Wow. And this is just utter devastation on the battlefield. It looks really cool. I know this game is aging, and sometimes its age shows in the texture qualities and close-ups and stuff like that, but still, it's a pretty gruesome battlefield going on back here. All right, looks like the Romans are going to throw some more units here to try and knock out this Carthaginian bodyguard. It's not a bad idea. See if you can kill the commander and swing morale. You need something if you're the Romans at this point. These Triarii even don't have a prayer of stopping this elephant. I said earlier that I thought Carthage potentially has an advantage. I definitely think that now, because Rome is very quickly running out of tools that have any capability whatsoever of dealing with a rampaging African elephant. And Triarii, I mean, they're going to cause as much damage to it as any unit could on foot, but like any unit on foot, the mass is not going to be in their favor. They're just going to get absolutely elephant trampled here. They're trying to form a square. That makes sense. It increases morale, increases bracing, but those elephants stop for no one. Not even small children crossing the road. And that is 510 kills and climbing. So these elephants, honestly, I got to say that was very nicely played. Number one, keep those things hidden in the backs. Now, feasibly, if the Roman team is paying very close attention, they would notice that only 2 Carthaginian bodyguards are visible, and they could, at that point, assume that there could be Carthaginian elephants, or at the very least, a bodyguard hidden somewhere. And so the Romans did have the potential to assume it. Whether they did or didn't, I do not know. But again, very nice play on the elephants. A few things I want to call out here, because we don't see elephants used to immense success a ton in Rome 2, because they are very easily countered with the a huge number of javelins that CA packed into the game. And so when you see an elephant used right, it's worth calling out. It was held until the right moment. It was sent to the side of the battlefield where there was not a threat from javelins, and this proves what I've tried to say in other instances, which is if you do not have the missiles to counter the elephants, elephants are utterly and absolutely devastating. People say that Rome 2 doesn't have magic and it doesn't have all that stuff. Well, it kind of does, in a way. Like, the elephants are kind of like a magic spell. They come in and they delete enemies that are on foot. So in a way, they are like magic. And if you don't destroy them early, they will work their black magic on your army, and then you will find yourself facing defeat, as in this case. However, I wanted to say great game to all the Roman players here. Big, Zenus, Frosted, Sol over here on the Carthaginian team, Magnus, and Lone Berserker, making me proud, bringing home the trophy to the Carthaginian side in what seems like a rare occasion, as we see a Carthaginian victory over Rome. And it was a Pyrrhic victory indeed. This was a very close battle. Had the Romans had just any tool left to deal with, it looks like Magnus's elephants here, then that would have been a huge difference maker. I thought the Roman cavalry did a good job. It went back and forth with the Carthaginian cavalry, and both sides had their moments where they were gaining an advantage and then had to pull back. And it wasn't until those elephants came in and kind of crushed the remainder of that Roman cavalry on the right flank. But the Romans still caused a lot of casualties and made it difficult for Carthage to really be super dominant with the cavalry. But I also think it was a nice job throwing in what little cavalry Carthage had left to absolutely destroy the remaining Roman velites and levies and these archers. That was absolutely critical here, because those were going to be able to kill the elephants. And then Frosted here with the heavy infantry. Very nice performance in those Principe. Again, I love how this was played out. Come in, take the engagement with your Hastati. They honestly did fairly well, all things considered. And then come in late with those Principes, kind of on the same principle like we had with the elephants, except these units came in fresh, and they just absolutely destroyed what was left of that Carthaginian line. Unfortunately for them, the Carthaginians still had the elephants left, but a really cool matchup. Thank you to Sol. Thank you to the players. Again, go look in the description for more information on how to go join up with Sol and play in these battles with him if you would like to. Very much appreciate him. HeirofCarthage signing out for now. I'll see you all soon with some more action in Total War Rome 2.